Gervonta Davis has slammed Floyd Mayweather after his brutal prediction of Tank's upcoming fight with Frank Martin. Meanwhile, former professional boxer and commentator Tim Bradley believes that Frank Martin doesn't have the necessary experience to defeat Tank. Bradley believes that Tank will leverage his superior power to secure a late knockout victory over Martin. Martin's struggle to string together consistent rounds against Tank will also be detrimental. He won't have the luxury of playing it safe in the later rounds, maintaining a lead and steering clear of Tank's knockout attempts. Tim Bradley mentioned to Fight Hub TV that he believed Frank was lacking experience. Bradley explained that Frank needed to be able to put rounds together, and he didn't see Frank being able to do that, which he identified as the main issue.
I think that Frank, what he's lacking is experience. That's where he's lacking at. You know, he got to be able to put rounds together. And I don't see him being able to do that.
Bradley's assertion that Martin is not experienced enough to take on Tank Davis holds true. It's concerning that Martin struggled in the initial 7 rounds of his previous bout against Artem Harutyunyan last year. He only managed to activate his offensive strategy in the final rounds, from 8 to 12. If Martin has a sluggish start against Davis on Saturday night, he may find himself too far behind in the bout to mount a comeback. In his desperation, Martin might resort to reckless tactics, giving Tank the perfect opportunity to capitalize with a powerful punch and secure a knockout in the later rounds. Bradley added that he was also concerned about Frank in the later rounds, pointing out that Tank Davis was comfortable and didn't mind playing catch-up. Bradley noted that Davis was an apex predator for a reason, as he skillfully set traps that opponents often failed to recognize.
That's the problem. In the later rounds, I worry about Frank in the later rounds too, where you have a guy that's comfortable and he don't mind playing catch-up. See, that's the thing. Right. You don't realize that. You know, he's an apex predator for a reason. Because he says
if Martin repeats the slow start he showed against Harutyunyan, Tank Davis might not need to worry about catching up. Should Martin maintain that sluggish pace, Davis could take an early lead and force Martin into a desperate, reckless fighting style. This would create prime opportunities for Davis, the undefeated WBA secondary champion, to land powerful counterpunches. Bradley remarked that Tank Davis had the ability to wait for his opponent to make a mistake, then line up for a decisive shot, often finishing with one punch. He expressed his opinion that Frank tended to make mistakes, especially late in the match, which a fighter like Tank could easily exploit. A more prudent approach would have been for Frank Martin's management to match him up against a few skilled opponents in the 135-pound division before pitting him against the seasoned Tank.
Traps. He'll wait on you to make that mistake, and he'll line you up for that shot, and he'll finish you with one punch. I think Frank makes mistakes, and he makes mistakes late, where you have a guy like Tank to be able to expose that.
It appears that Martin's promoters rushed to secure a lucrative fight for him, skipping the crucial step of gaining sufficient experience to prepare for such a significant leap in competition. Ideally, Martin should have faced other opponents before challenging Tank for his WBA title. Moreover, Bradley mentioned that as the fight progressed, all the hype, the bright lights, and the presence of being in the ring with Tank Davis, a fighter capable of punching hard with both hands, would exhaust Frank Martin. In the end, Bradley predicted a late stoppage from Tank.
As the fight goes on, all the hype around the fight, all those bright lights, and just that presence of being in there with Tank, the guy that can punch hard with both hands, bro, it's gonna gas out Frank Martin. So I say late stoppage from Tank.
Teofimo Lopez, on the other hand, has consistently been outspoken about the state of boxing, both in and out of the ring. As a self-proclaimed boxing enthusiast, he offered his thoughts to Fight Hub TV regarding the Davis versus Martin match. Lopez commented that if Frank Martin pressed Tank Davis without showing him any respect, it could result in a different type of fight. However, some observers find this approach to be dubious. Renowned for his remarkable 93% knockout percentage, Gervonta Davis frequently punishes opponents who take an aggressive stance.
I think that if Frank Martin goes and presses Tank Davis without showing him any respect, then we should see a different type of outing.
Lopez further elaborated that if Martin entered the fight respecting the power and hype behind Gervonta Davis, it would likely result in an early night for Martin. This assertion is especially startling given the notorious sparring footage of Lopez and Davis. In the video, Davis delivers a powerful counterpunch to Lopez towards the end of their bout, causing the sparring to be halted. Considering this background, it's puzzling why Lopez would endorse a strategy that seemingly caters to Davis's strengths.
However, if he comes in there just respecting the power and the hype behind Gervonta Davis, then I believe that'll be an early night for Frank Martin.
In addition to discussing the impending battle between Davis and Martin, Lopez shared details about his decision to decline a matchup with Ryan Garcia. He explained that the timing wasn't right and expressed gratitude for his current situation. Lopez mentioned that if he and Garcia were to face each other in the future, they would incorporate USADA and VADA for more extensive testing to ensure the sport remained clean. Ryan Garcia emerged victorious over Devin Haney after turning down Teofimo's proposal, only to later find himself embroiled in controversy when a test revealed traces of ostarine in his system. Should Garcia avoid suspension, a clash between him and Lopez would undoubtedly become one of the most eagerly awaited matchups in the coming year.
At the right time, and just by doing that, I'm just thankful that the outcome for me now is like, where else can I take it? And if we meet again in that sense and they come about me and Ryan Garcia facing each other, then we'll bring in USADA, we'll bring in WADA, and we'll bring in more testing into the sport. That way we keep it clean.
Vasily Lomachenko, once a rival to Teofimo Lopez, recently crossed paths with another familiar adversary of Lopez's, George Kambosos. Lomachenko emerged victorious in a commanding and conclusive manner against Kambosos. Lopez commented, "I knew that Loma would win. The guy hasn't looked impressive in his last outings. Good for him. He's getting his flowers as he should." This result is noteworthy since Lomachenko's decisive victory over Kambosos was somewhat unexpected because Lopez had previously fought Lomachenko to win the 135-pound titles, but then lost to Kambosos. Lopez also discussed the possibility of a rematch with Kambosos, stating, "I wanted that rematch, never got it. They wanted to go with the money and take the Loma fight in Australia." Although Lopez stated that he would like to see them again, it doesn't seem likely right now. It might be a thrilling fight, but given the circumstances and timing, it may not be as important as it once was. Coming back to the fight between Frank Martin and Gervonta Davis, it won't be their first time competing together as they have sparred previously. Will the past altercations between the lightweight competitors matter? When the action takes place on June 15th, a victory over Martin can help Davis, one of boxing's biggest names, go closer to some of the biggest battles in the sport. Potential showdowns against Shakur Stevenson, Teofimo Lopez, and a rematch with Ryan Garcia loom on the horizon for Tank, and the Baltimore native isn't discounting any lessons learned from past sparring sessions with Martin. Tank recently said, "We got to see on June 15th if he's really intimidated. I spared him before at the Mayweather gym. Nothing really personal. It was just two young guys that were trying to make something out of nothing." Frank Martin, at 29 years old, with an unblemished record of 18 wins and 12 knockouts, is about to step into uncharted territory. This upcoming match marks his debut in a world title fight and his premiere as the main event on a pay-per-view card. If fortune favors him and he clinches the victory, Martin will etch his name in history as the first fighter to defeat the undefeated Davis, boasting an impressive record of 29 wins, including 27 knockouts. Tank emerges as the epitome of boxing for the upcoming wave of American fight enthusiasts. Despite Canelo Alvarez retaining his status as the sport's foremost luminary, Davis's ascent to prominence is indisputable, as illustrated by his 7th consecutive pay-per-view bout. Martin is excited for this opportunity to establish himself in the sport and leave a lasting legacy. Martin said at his media workout, "I feel like this is one of those moments where all the hard work I put in is paying off. This just feels like a life-changing moment." Martin, an admitted tardy entrant to the boxing world, sauntered into the gym gates at the age of 17, but it wasn't until he turned 18 that he truly embraced the sport. Familiar with the feeling of being the overlooked contender, he spent years battling in local rings before joining forces with trainer Derek James, a partnership that propelled him onto the national stage. In 2022, Martin soared to prominence with a resounding victory, unanimously outmatching the undefeated Michel Rivera. This triumph marked a pivotal moment in his journey towards solidifying his status as a formidable contender within the lightweight division. Despite sharing Davis's age, Martin's journey diverged significantly. Rising from a regional attraction, Martin fought tooth and nail to ascend, contrasting sharply with Davis, a prodigious amateur whose early performances captivated audiences, ultimately solidifying his status as the household name he is today. "I believe in myself, even if the world is against me," said Martin, who enters the fight as a 4.5 to 1 underdog according to some odds makers. He added, "It's just time for me to show up and show out." Even after an absence spanning almost 14 months, Martin anticipates witnessing Davis at his peak. Boasting an impressive 93% knockout ratio, Martin is confident that come fight night, Davis will deliver a performance that etches his name into the annals of boxing history. Martin said, "We all know what Tank brings, but a lot of guys don't know what I bring. They know a little bit of it, but they don't know the the full arsenal I have. We know Tank is explosive and fast, Martin added. He's got it all, but on fight night, the world will see that I've got it all too. Martin's supporters are raising eyebrows regarding his prospects, considering his recent setbacks against Artem Harutyunyan and his lack of notable victories. Despite his strength and determination, Martin is setting his sights on taking on Tank, the pride of Baltimore, who recently secured a stunning 7th-round knockout victory against the social media sensation Ryan Garcia. With Tank Davis returning to the ring after a 14-month break, the uncertainty looms over how he will fare against Martin. Errol Spence Jr., in the meantime, is endorsing Martin and forecasting an upset victory over Tank.
Yeah, I see him getting his hand raised. I mean, I feel like he's the most skilled, talented fighter that Tank ever fought. Like, it's one of those he can't take those early rounds off and feel like he's gonna come in the 7th, 8th round and hope for a knockout. I feel like Frank gonna dominate him first through 12th round and win a fight. I mean, Tank gonna put up a fight. You know, he's a great fighter, but I feel like Frank definitely gonna take it.
Spence analyzes that Martin's path to victory in this bout hinges significantly on ramping up his punch output and infusing his strikes with greater force. Tank's vulnerability to opponents who unleash a barrage of punches is well documented, a departure from Martin's customary method. Typically, Martin opts for a more measured tempo, leaning on the potency of his blows. Spence's tactic advising Martin to come out swinging is right on the mark, yet facing Tank's formidable strength in the early rounds might compel Martin to rethink his strategy and opt for a more cautious approach. This situation draws parallels to Ryan Garcia, who grew hesitant after Tank dealt him a blow in the 2nd round last April. Spence noted that while Tank would undoubtedly present a challenge and recognized him as a formidable opponent, he remained confident in Frank's ability to prevail. He asserted that Frank stood as the toughest adversary Tank had encountered thus far, emphasizing that Tank would feel the full force of Frank's speed, power, and prowess come fight night.
He's the best fighter he's fought. He's gonna see the speed, he's gonna see the strength, he's gonna see the power that Frank brings to the table on fight night.
Had Martin not stumbled in his recent match against Artem Harutyunyan, perhaps fans would be more receptive to Spence's assurances. Had he bounced back with a remarkable showing against a formidable adversary like Shakur Stevenson, Andy Cruz, or Vasily Lomachenko, he might have won back their trust. Alas, that scenario remains unrealized. In the midst of it all, Frank Martin boldly asserts his belief that Gervonta Davis has committed a grave mistake in picking him as the contender for his WBA regular lightweight title defense. Martin is resolute in his determination to make Tank rue the day he chose to step into the ring with him, aiming to hand the 29-year-old his first ever career loss in their impending clash scheduled for next month. To truly propel forward, athletes such as Tank must engage in bouts that push their limits, accompanied by electrifying undercards to enhance the thrill. It's perplexing that Isaac Cruz remains the most notable name on Davis's roster of opponents. He should have faced tougher challenges by now. Detractors blame Tank Davis's previous promoters at Mayweather Promotions for sheltering him from formidable rivals in the 135-pound category. Nonetheless, this approach is no longer viable, particularly with PBC striving to present gripping spectacles on Prime Video PPV. Talking about his title shot next month against Davis, Martin said, "I get the opportunity to show the world what I'm all about. I appreciate Gervonta Davis for even taking the fight. I believe they fucked up by taking this fight, but I do appreciate them giving me this opportunity to show the world what I'm about. I'm just ready to go out and shock the world and do what I do and what people think I can't do." Having engaged in fisticuffs with Gervonta Davis in the past, Frank Martin possesses an intimate understanding of Davis's capabilities. In a recent conversation, Martin reflected on their sparring sessions, deeming them invaluable experiences. He commended Davis's precision, unwavering stance, and his relentless approach to combat. Nonetheless, Martin noted that Davis's punches lacked the sheer force he had encountered in his illustrious career.
What do you think of a fight?
We could go. We could go. We could go. You know, I just fought the title eliminator or whatever for the WBA, so we could go.
What would that fight look like?
It'll be a good fight. It'll be an explosive fight, two fast fighters, two strong, explosive fighters. It'll be a dope, dominant fight, you know. Explosive fight. It'll be an explosive fight.
Do you feel like you guys being familiar with each other from sparring and whatnot, that would play a role in the fight at all?
Nah, you know, that was years ago. You know what I mean? So he had come to the ring with something different, and then, you know, vice versa, I'd do the same.
Reflecting on his collaboration with Davis, Martin commended their effective teamwork, with both individuals asserting themselves admirably. He lauded Davis for his keenness, highlighting how few contenders could match his swiftness and agility. Martin said, "It was good work. I held my my own. He held his. Good experience. He's sharp. You gotta have some power. You gotta be able to hold your own in there because Tank's a beast. When asked if Davis was the most challenging adversary he'd ever faced, Martin shook his head, pointing instead to a Mexican fighter named Pablo as the most powerful puncher he'd ever stood against. Despite this, Martin acknowledged Davis's strength, commenting, "Nah, it's a Mexican boxer I sparred with. His name is Pablo, but he got some power. He can crack. Good timing, sharp." On that note, Frank Martin's trainer Derek James expressed, "We have Frank Martin working out. Things have been said about the fight against Davis in June. It's a big deal, yeah?" Meanwhile, trainer Robert Garcia boldly proclaims that Frank Martin poses the most formidable challenge yet for Gervonta Davis throughout his 11-year journey in professional boxing. Garcia exudes excitement for this impending showdown, convinced that Martin will push Davis to his limits when they clash. He said, "Probably to date, and I'm thinking about the other opponents Tank has had, this is probably the toughest." Tank's management has shown remarkable strategic acumen in handpicking his adversaries, a key element in his modest fan following. His dependence on Ryan Garcia for his inaugural pay-per-view triumph is rather regrettable. Tank's current level of fame might seem like a cause for celebration for his management and past promoters. However, their tactics have inadvertently hindered his progress, resulting in a stagnant state where he struggles to reach the pinnacle achieved by Canelo Alvarez. Robert said, "He has picked the right opponents. The lightweight division is stacked. There's Shakur, Loma, just to mention those two that are right in my head right now. He's never gone after those guys." Expectations were high for Tank to embark on a new journey after his fight with Ryan in the previous year. Many anticipated he would step up to face formidable contenders like Vasily Lomachenko and Shakur Stevenson in the 135-pound division. However, Tank seems to be sticking to his old ways as he has not yet pursued this path. This raises doubts about whether he'll ever change his approach, especially considering his tendency to carefully choose his opponents. Robert said, "They've done a great job with him. This is probably going to be the most talented, the most difficult one that he's faced. I think the experience that Tank has of being on the big stage, headlining so many big fights, and the crowd is all going to be in his favor." Martin towers over every opponent Tank has faced, casting a shadow that even the likes of Ryan, Hector Garcia, Rolando Romero, Leo Santa Cruz, and Isaac Cruz couldn't breach. Tank's adversaries may be second tier, but Martin is in a league of his own. According to Robert, I think that's going to make a big difference. Frank Martin's first time ever in a big fight like that. That might play a big role. He has an experienced trainer that has been there before. That should help. I think it's going to be a very competitive fight. A surprising outcome looms over this match, as Tank's extended hiatus from the ring collides with his inaugural confrontation against a formidable opponent. Martin harbors the ability to push Tank to his limits and clinch a triumph, unveiling his untapped prowess in the process. Robert said Gervonta does really good numbers, but I think he still needs to get those big names in front of him. I haven't heard him try to make a fight with Loma, Shakur, or any of them, or any of the top guys even at 140. Meanwhile, Shakur Stevenson, the current WBC lightweight champion, envisions a rapid and conclusive win for Gervonta Davis against Frank Martin. With unwavering certainty, Stevenson forecasts Davis's complete dominance over Martin, whom he deems a C-level adversary. Stevenson contends that Martin's introduction to boxing at 15 years old puts him at a disadvantage compared to fighters like Tank Davis and himself, who began their careers earlier. This delayed initiation has left Martin playing catch-up with his peers, a position Stevenson believes will prove challenging to overcome. He said, "The way I look at that fight, it's level. There are levels to the fight. Tank is going to go in there and figure him out. Figure out that he's really not on his level, and then he's going to annihilate him and feel like he's on the top of the world because he annihilated somebody that is C-level." Shakur's view of Martin has gone through a remarkable transformation. At first, captivated by Martin's attraction to confrontation, Shakur's outlook shifted drastically when Martin turned down a profitable opportunity for a brawl. In an instant, Martin plummeted in Shakur's estimation, now deemed only worthy of the C-level label. However, despite this downgrade, Martin still poses a considerable threat in the upcoming match, largely due to Tank's comeback after a 14-month break, during which he hasn't faced rivals of Martin's caliber. Shakur said about Tank Davis, "I think he fought better fighters than Frank. Honestly, I see Frank, and I'm not trying to disrespect Frank because I heard him say in an interview that I'm hating on him. I'm really not." Leonard Ellerby, CEO of Mayweather Promotions, believes Tank will win in the meantime. He confidently asserted, "Frank Martin can't beat Tank Davis. None of those guys can beat Tank Davis. Frank's a good-ass fighter. He can't beat Tank, though." Ellerby is intimately acquainted with this melody, having observed the self-assurance of previous lightweight contenders, akin to Ryan Garcia, only to watch them falter when the crucial moment arrives in the boxing arena. However, during another interview, Ellerby showered Frank Martin with accolades, almost ceremoniously anointing him as the next challenger for Gervonta Davis.
Martin's a good fighter. Yeah. He's a very good fighter. And some of the things I've been hearing lately just about him, just, you know, from just browsing it. It's like people want to make excuses now. They want to make excuses. Don't make no.
For who?
They want to make excuses talking about this fighter ain't that good, and I don't want to hear none of that. All these fighters are good.
Make sure to check out some of our other videos on the screen if you enjoyed this one.